Would Russia be able to attack a NATO country as early as this fall, 2026? That's what we're going to be discussing today on this edition of the No Delusion Zone for Saturday, August 8th, 2026. There has been a lot of reporting recently on a topic that a lot of pundits, a lot of experts and analysts in the West don't want to discuss. Or if they do discuss it, they poo-poo it. They dismiss it out of hand as being totally ridiculous. I don't think it's totally ridiculous, and I know that folks in Ukraine and folks within the U.S. and NATO intelligence establishment are not dismissing it out of hand. Look, it's no secret that Russia has been absolutely hammering Ukraine, has launched some absolutely devastating attacks on Ukraine over the last few weeks with ballistic missiles and, yes, drones. It's just been horrifying. The number of dead and wounded have risen astronomically. The damage, the catastrophic damage inflicted on the Ukrainian energy infrastructure and just the loss of lives and other civilian structures, apartment houses, gas stations, malls, you name it, has just been horrific. So obviously, Russia doesn't have a shortage of weapons to strike out, ballistic missiles of all kinds, and certainly not drones. Yes, they do have, well, I'm not going to say less than when the full-scale war started in February of 2022. But they've got a lot. And here's the thing. Russia has turned its entire economy pretty much over to a wartime footing. They don't believe in putting this up to a vote and wondering, how the people think about it, how many people are going to be put out of work, or if they're morally against it. They don't really give a damn. So they turned just about all of their civilian-related production facilities, factories, and research and so forth over to the military so they can continue to hammer and try to wipe out the nation of Ukraine. So they've got a lot of missiles, ballistic and otherwise, drones. Not only that, they have been supplied, backstopped on missiles and other ammunition and weapons by North Korea, who also pumps them out at a staggering rate. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Russia actually has more missiles, even, taking into account the ones that have been destroyed, shot down, and the factories and launchers that have been destroyed by Ukraine. I'm going to say that they actually have more now than they did at the start of the war, and they're being replenished at a staggering rate every month. So to say that Russia doesn't have the ability right now, because of the war in Ukraine, to launch any kind of an attack against anyone else, including a NATO country, I think is not well founded. I think that's a dangerous thought to have, and I know that Western intelligence and military leaders are not thinking that way at all, because they know the real story. And I'm going to actually right now go to a couple of pieces on this from a couple of different media outlets that discuss this. The first one is from CBS here in the States. And the title is U.S. intelligence agencies warn Putin could test NATO by authorizing provocative actions. And it goes, American intelligence assessments indicate Russian President Vladimir Putin could be increasingly willing to authorize provocative actions that could extend onto NATO territory. U.S. officials briefed on the matter told CBS News. Those actions could include hybrid operations, cyber attacks, and other deniable measures, short of conventional military campaign, the official said. The assessment reflects a shift in Putin's risk calculus compared with just a few months ago, U.S. officials say. The likely goal would not necessarily be to trigger a broader conflict, but to test NATO's unity and the Trump administration willingness to respond to attack on a NATO ally. Think about that. Hybrid warfare. They're not talking about Russian tanks, storming over the border into Poland or the Baltic. That didn't even work in the invasion of Ukraine 4.5 years ago. No, they're talking about a hybrid attack. And the most important word to think about in all of that phrase was deniability. It's absolutely certain that one of the tactics they're going to use, should they do this, is to blame Ukraine for a drone that went off target. The GPS got all fouled up, or something else, just some other ridiculous false flag type of an operation where they deny it was them, which Russia always denies everything. Russia has never admitted anything about anything, and they're not going to start now. So deniability, a missile, a drone, even a hybrid attack will be blamed on Ukraine or anybody else except Russia. There's been many hybrid attacks already against the West, including one just recently in Leipzig, Germany, where a drone, an armed drone with a lot of explosives, was found at an airport near a Ukrainian cargo plane. Let's just go to the next one here. This is from the Kyiv Post. And it says, U.S. intelligence reports raise new alarms that Russian President Vladimir Putin could provoke a NATO nation with limited attack as early as this fall, the Wall Street Journal reported. According to the Wall Street Journal, officials in Washington previously believed that an attack on NATO ally could not occur within Russia's preoccupation with its war in Ukraine. The newfound belief by U.S. intelligence matches a chorus of similar warnings made by European officials in recent months. In June, the head of Germany's army, Lieutenant General Christian Freuding, cautioned that Russia might have the capabilities to strike NATO countries within the next 3 years. According to the Wall Street Journal, U.S. officials believe that a large-scale hybrid warfare attack or even limited land incursion may come between the fall of this year and 2029. Let me just say that other reporting pushes that possible date for some kind of an incursion into NATO territory, NATO nations, within just a few weeks. Moving on to the next report here. This one comes from the Telegraph in the UK. And it reads, Russia could attack a NATO country within weeks to test the alliance's resolve, U.S. intelligence has warned. U.S. officials believe Russia may attempt to escalate tensions by mounting a small land incursion or launching cyber attacks across Eastern Europe anytime from this autumn to 2029, the Wall Street Journal reported. The report marks a significant shift in U.S. intelligence assessments from their previous stance that Vladimir Putin would not attack while still caught up in his war in Ukraine. And it goes on to say some additional facts about that. But the main point is, according to the U.S. intelligence assessment, which is being echoed by intelligence assessments in Ukraine as well as in Europe, is that Putin, Russia, may be capable and may have the desire, the motive to attack a NATO country within the next few weeks. Not in the next few years, although that's possible too. But he is capable of attacking a NATO nation, most probably in Eastern Europe, even more probably in the Baltic regions, within a few weeks, as a diversion to take everyone's mind, at least in Europe, off of Ukraine, to split NATO into deciding what will they do. Who should they defend? Their own country or a fellow NATO country that may not be able to defend itself, i.e. enact Article 5, where an attack on one NATO nation is construed as an attack on all NATO nations? They're going to have to make that decision. And again, I'm not saying that Russian tanks or bombers are going to be going over the border into any NATO country and dropping bombs or shooting from their cannons or infantry's marching across the border. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is that they could do a campaign of denial with drones or missiles going suddenly off target and denying they came from from Russia, or if they did, it was a complete mistake. Their GPS or some other tracking devices, the computer went haywire, or it was AI. They had nothing to do with it, or just a massive cyber attack. And see what happens. See what the response is. And if the response is as timid as it's been, and I've written and spoken about this a lot over the last few years, if the NATO response of any individual country or NATO as a whole is as cowardly as it has been when drones have exploded into NATO countries, when missiles have landed in NATO countries, such as the one recently in Poland, when an explosive device, a drone loaded with explosives, was found undetonated, luckily, on an airport runway in Leipzig, Germany, near a Ukrainian cargo plane, and the response has been outrage, diplomatic outrage. They call in the Russian ambassador and give them a good tongue lashing. That's about it. So what these reports are saying, basically, is that Russia could very likely, within the next few weeks, up the ante. They can see the cowardice. They could see the timidity. They can see the disorganization and the unwillingness of NATO nations singly and as a whole to respond in force to Russian incursions, whatever they may be, onto NATO territory. I'm sorry, sending a drone, sending a missile, putting a drone laden with explosives on a NATO country, hoping to blow up an aircraft. And by the way, it was just lucky that the detonator didn't go off. And that's the only reason for that. I'm talking about the explosives-laden drone found in Leipzig, Germany. All these other hybrid warfare. And, let's get rid of the word hybrid. It's warfare. All these things that have been launched against Europe, the cyber attacks, the assassinations, the arson, the explosions, the interfering with the elections, all of this taken together, my opinion, is an act of war. They are testing, constantly testing and probing for what the NATO response is going to be, which has been, as I said, almost nothing. And the more they test, the more they probe, and the nothing response that comes from NATO is going to allow Russia, including that maniac Putin, to decide, hey, well, we can push even further and harder, because that's what Russia does. They test, they probe. And when there's no response, they go and they do the next thing. They up the ante. They go to the next level. And that's all these reports are saying, that Russia, Putin, is prepared to do that and could be able to do that, even with the shortage and the pounding their military has taken within the next few weeks or within the next 3 years. But it could start as early as this fall, 2026. And I'm talking to you, NATO nations. Get your act together now. I know you don't have a spine yet, although I will say you're doing better. You are doing better, not only in ramping up your own budgets and defense capabilities and retooling your factories for making weapons again, as well as your aid to Ukraine. You ain't nowhere near where you need to be. And you know that. The leaders of Western Europe know that, especially their own intelligence agency and military leaders. You know that. But with this most recent report by U.S. intelligence, we all know that. So get your act together, because once this starts and your reaction is to do hand-wringing and give the Russian ambassador a good tongue lashing, it's too late. And that's it for today's podcast. And as always, please, need your support. The only way that I can continue to do this is with your support. I've got almost 57,000 subscribers now, on my way to hopefully 100,000 by the end of the year, but I can only do it with your support. So let me go to that good old like and subscribe button. Please like and subscribe this channel, the No Delusion Zone. The algorithms of YouTube are killing me. Whenever I do an analysis of Russia, which I do every day almost, they kill me. They don't like that. Because why? They're full of crap. I don't know what the reason is, but the algorithms kill analysts like me, kill podcasters like me who try to do an honest analysis, give their honest opinion on what's going on in Ukraine and in Europe with NATO and the EU. So like and subscribe to the No Delusion Zone, and I'd appreciate it. Until the next time, then, you all take care, stay safe, and stay sane.